In this lecture, we're going to examine some of the different types of muscle contractions that can happen with a muscle as we generate tension, and then look at the different kinds of fibers, the different types of muscle cells that we find in a whole muscle, to understand a little bit about how they function and can provide different functions in the body. Okay, so when a muscle gets a signal to contract, a muscle fiber gets a signal to contract, then tension winds up being generated as the cross bridges form, as the cross bridges connect, and bind to the actin filaments, and then they flex, causing that shortening of the sarcomeres to happen. And so as this happens, tension is developed in the whole muscle, and we see contraction in the whole muscle. But just because tension develops doesn't mean that the muscle will shorten. So in order for the muscle fibers to shorten, the whole muscle must generate more force than whatever the opposing force is that the work that the muscle is doing. So here, I know that that's a little confusing, so let's get a picture. Of course, you gotta love my awesome drawings. Hopefully you recognize that that's an arm, and in this hand we're gonna put a dumbbell. Now, just with the guy with this person holding the dumbbell, there is tension in that muscle. But if we want to flex the elbow joint, if we want to bring the elbow joint upwards, then we have to generate in the biceps muscle, the biceps brachii, and in the brachialis muscle that's deep to the biceps brachii, we've got to generate more tension than the weight of the dumbbells pushing downward if we're going to get that muscle to flex. So just because we generate tension in a muscle doesn't mean that we are necessarily going to cause movement to happen. In order for movement to happen, the tension that we generate has to be create stronger forces than whatever is opposing our tension. Okay, hopefully that now makes sense with my awesome drawing that you know you love. So, what kind of muscle contractions are there? Well, two types, isotonic and isometric. So we'll look first at the isotonic contractions. How do you remember isotonic versus isometric? Iso means same. Ton, in this case, is telling us it means tension. So in isotonic contractions, tension increases, but muscle length changes. So we see as the tension in the muscle increases, then the muscle is allowed to shorten or to lengthen. If it shortens, then this is called a concentric contraction. So this is the guy lifting the barbell, or the person lifting the barbell. So as tension is generated in the muscle, the tension exceeds the resistance of the barbells, and we see shortening in the muscle. There can also be eccentric contractions. For me, I can remember the difference between concentric and eccentric because I think about the alternative meaning of eccentric, which is strange, right? If somebody is eccentric, they're a little strange. Well, it's strange to me to think about tension in the muscle increasing even though the muscle is lengthening. So, with eccentric contractions, the whole muscle lengthens even as the muscle fibers are contracting. And so that occurs when the tension or the resistance to the movement, so in this case the weight of the barbell, is greater than the tension that's being generated in the muscle. So let's say you're lifting a barbell and it's a heavy one, and you lift it, you do a concentric contraction, you flex your arm. Now you want to slowly place the barbell back down, not drop it, not be putting it down out of control. So you have to maintain or continue to generate resistance or tension in that muscle, even as you're letting it lower down. So as you lower it down, you're still maintaining resistance against or tension, and you're still resisting the weight of that barbell as you place it down. So the muscle is lengthening as you do it. So you can give this a try. Grab something really heavy and lift it, concentric contractions, and then put it down again in a very slow, controlled manner. That would be your eccentric contraction. So in isotonic contractions, the tension stays the same. But the muscle is changing length. So isotonic, muscle's changing length. Concentric, the muscle is shortening. Eccentric, the muscle is lengthening. In isometric contractions, iso again means same. Metric is now about measuring, the length in this case of the muscle. So now the muscle develops tension, but we do not change the muscle length. So the muscles, so you don't see movement with isometric contractions. You only generate tension, but no movement. So if you just flex your muscles, so if you place your arm into, your elbows into a flexed state, and then tense up your muscles really hard, you're doing isometric contractions. Or let's say you pick up a table to carry it. You and a buddy are moving a table in your house. You pick up the table, okay, so you have to do a little bit of a concentric contraction there. But then as you're walking along carrying that heavy table, you're doing isometric contractions so that you can just maintain that position of the table as you're carrying it. So we do a lot of isometric contractions in just daily standing, maintaining upright posture, holding stationary positions. That work is done in the body by mostly isometric contractions. So, interestingly, most body movements require isotonic and isometric contractions. So you're doing a movement perhaps, but you have to stabilize your body or the muscles that are doing that movement. Stabilization is done with isometric contractions. Okay, so isotonic contractions, concentric or eccentric. Isometric contractions where no movement is generated. Okay, so now we can also look at the individual fibers in a muscle and place them into one of three categories. And athletes have been taking advantage of this forever, training themselves or training specific muscle fibers in the active muscles that they're using because they want to get more performance from those specific fiber types. So let's take a look at these three different fiber types. We classify them based on the amount of myoglobin that's in the cell. Remember, myoglobin is a molecule that can store up oxygen. So more myoglobin means you can generate ATP for a longer time period. Also by the efficiency of an enzyme called myosin ATPase. This is the enzyme that's involved in breaking the bond between the actin and myosin, the actin molecule and the myosin cross bridge, that head on the myosin molecule that reaches up and makes connection with the actin molecule. So that's the second way that it's classified, is how efficient it is, how quickly it does that breaking. And then the third category is the metabolic pathways that are used to make most of the ATP in the cell. Because some cells have more aerobic means of making ATP, while other cells have more anaerobic means of making ATP. So overall then, we can classify muscle fibers as slow twitch fibers, as fast twitch or glycolytic fibers, or as intermediate, sometimes thought of as fatigue resistant fast twitch fibers. So we got 3 different classifications, and whole muscles are always built of a combination of these 3 fiber types to maximize their usefulness. And you can really see the differences among these muscles in, say, marathon runners versus sprinters. Sprinters tend to have really thick, bunchy, heavy muscles while in the legs, while marathoners, people who do long distance exercise like that, tend to have longer, thinner, leaner looking muscles, less mass to them. And that is because they are busy exercising and training very different muscle fiber types in their leg muscles as they do their work. Okay, so let's first look at the slow twitch fibers, sometimes called type 1 fibers or red fibers. They have a super rich supply of myoglobin, which is why they have this really deep red color. And then there are also significant capillary networks which provide lots and lots of oxygen to them. And they have a very slow-acting ATP, relatively. We're still talking about muscles here, so even slow is fast, if you know what I mean. So they have a relatively slow-acting myosin ATPase, so that muscle cells contract and relax more slowly than those that have the fast-acting ATPase. And there's lots and lots of mitochondria, so they are capable of producing lots and lots of ATP through aerobic means. These are muscles that are able to contract, or muscle fibers that are able to contract for long periods of time without fatiguing. So they have significant supplies of ATP because they've got lots of mitochondria and lots of oxygen available. These are the muscle fibers that are that marathoners are busy training so that they can get lots and lots and lots of long-term exercise. But they don't have the capacity to work as quickly as other muscle fibers do. So they tend to what's the right word? They conserve their oxygen, their ATP supplies, so that they are capable of lots and lots of long distance or long effort performance. Fast twitch fibers, the fast twitch glycolytic fibers, sometimes called type 2 or white fibers, on the other hand, they tend to have relatively little myoglobin. So now we're talking about the difference between red meat and white meat. Say if you're eating a chicken breast is white meat. That's because it's got a lot of these fast twitch fibers capable of very rapid movement, bird's flight, whereas the leg muscles of a bird, the thigh, the leg, tend to be more of the red meat. With this, they're capable of doing longer motion or long-term exercise. So they have relatively little myoglobin and limited capillary networks, less blood supply, and less oxygen holding capacity. They have fewer and smaller mitochondria, so again, less ATP, and they have really fast-acting myosin ATPases, so that the muscle can contract and relax very quickly. And then there's the sarcoplasmic reticulum is very large, so that they can recapture all the calcium ions very quickly. And they tend to use the anaerobic pathways to synthesize ATP. These are muscles that can contract rapidly, but tend to fatigue quickly. These are the fibers that sprinters are really working hard to develop, because when you're sprinting, you're running only short distances, but you're supposed to run them very, 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 very quickly. So that creates a different requirement in the muscle for muscle contraction to occur, and different requirements for how much ATP you have to have available at all times. So those are the fast twitch or the glycolytic fibers. And then there are the intermediate fibers. These are fast twitch fibers, but they tend to be more fatigue resistant because they can have high myoglobin, lots of oxygen available, and lots of mitochondria. But they still use this fast-acting myosin ATPase. And they use aerobic metabolism rather than anaerobic metabolism to make their ATP. So these muscles can contract rapidly, but they don't fatigue as quickly as the super fast contracting fast twitch muscles can. So it's an intermediate form between fast twitch and slow twitch. So muscles are built then of all three types of muscle fibers in order to maximize their performance. And then again, trainers or athletes who are training will focus on training specific muscle fiber types to get the kind of performance they're looking for from their bodies. Okay, there you have it, the types of muscle contractions and the fibers that do that work. Any questions? Send me an email.